I never thought an ordinary morning in our quiet Ohio home would become the day that redefined how I saw my mother. The sun was just beginning to rise, spreading a soft golden glow across the kitchen walls. The smell of freshly brewed coffee lingered in the air, and I sat at the table, flipping absent-mindedly through the newspaper, half awake. Then she walked in. My mother, Linda, had always carried herself with grace, even in the simplest moments. She was the type of woman who smiled through pain, who kept her shoulders straight even when life weighed heavy on them. But that morning, something about her felt different. Her steps were slower, her face more drawn, her eyes carrying a quiet storm she could no longer hide. "Good morning, Mom," I said, setting the paper aside. "Morning, Daniel," she whispered, her voice unusually soft. I looked at her closely. Her hands trembled as she poured coffee into her mug. She sat across from me, staring into the rising steam as though searching for answers she had buried for years. "Daniel," she began, her voice breaking slightly, "there's something I've been keeping in my heart for a long time. Something I never had the courage to tell you. But I think it's time." My chest tightened. My mother wasn't one to speak in riddles. She had always been steady, predictable, like the rhythm of our family's life itself. To hear her speak this way sent a chill through me. "What is it, Mom?" I asked carefully. She lifted her eyes to mine, and for the first time in my 32 years of life, I saw her not just as my mother, but as a woman who had lived through storms I couldn't imagine. Tears glistened in her eyes, though she fought to hold them back. "You deserve to know the truth," she whispered. The clock ticked loudly on the wall. The kitchen, once so familiar and warm, felt heavy with anticipation. "When I was 19, she said slowly, "long before I met your father, I fell in love. His name was Robert. He was everything a young girl thinks she wants: charming, spontaneous, full of promises. For a while, I believed he was my future." I had never heard this name before. My mother rarely spoke about her past, only ever mentioning vague stories of college, working part-time jobs, or meeting my dad. Her voice grew unsteady. "But Robert, he wasn't who I thought he was. He carried secrets, shadows I was too naive to see. And by the time I realized, I was already pregnant." The world around me seemed to freeze. My coffee grew cold in my hands. You were pregnant?" I asked softly, stunned. "Yes," she whispered, her eyes brimming with tears. "I was 19 and terrified. I thought I was in love, but Robert wanted no part of it. He left, Daniel. He disappeared when I needed him most. I was alone, frightened, and with a choice that felt impossible." She clasped her hands together, as though steadying herself. "I had a baby, a little girl, and I gave her up for adoption." Her words struck me like lightning. My heart raced, my mind spinning. I couldn't speak at first. You had a daughter?" "Yes," she said, her voice cracking. "Before you were ever born. Your sister. Somewhere out there. She grew up without me. I carried her for 9 months, and then I let her go because I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought she deserved better than a scared, single 19-year-old who had no idea how to raise a child." Her tears fell freely now, streaking her face, but she didn't wipe them away. "I buried it deep inside me," she continued, her voice breaking. "When I met your father, I thought maybe I could start over. I told myself I'd locked that chapter of my life away forever. But, Daniel, not a single day has gone by that I haven't thought of her. Wondering what her first word was, what her laugh sounded like, who she became. And I hated myself for keeping this from you and your father. I was so afraid you'd see me differently." I reached across the table and took her trembling hands into mine. My throat was tight, my chest heavy with emotions I couldn't yet put into words. "Mom," I whispered, "why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because I thought silence was protection," she said. "I didn't want you to feel like I had betrayed you, or that you were somehow second to someone else. You and your father became my world. But in the quiet moments, when the house was still, I thought of her. My daughter, your sister. And it broke me inside." The room was filled with silence, except for her quiet sobs. I had always seen my mother as unshakable, the pillar of our family. Now, seeing her so vulnerable, admitting to a secret she had carried for decades, my heart ached in a way I had never experienced before. I squeezed her hands tighter. Mom, nothing you say could ever make me love you less. If anything, this makes me love you more. You've carried this alone for so long, and you shouldn't have had to. Her lips trembled into the faintest smile. You remind me of why I had the courage to finally speak. Because you've grown into the kind of man I always hoped you'd be, strong enough to hear my truth. I swallowed hard, fighting my own tears. Do you want to find her? Your daughter? Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she seemed like that 19-year-old girl again, fragile and unsure. I don't even know if she'd want to see me. She might hate me for giving her away. Or, I said softly, she might want nothing more than to meet the mother who gave her life. She covered her mouth, her tears flowing again, but this time they carried a glimmer of hope. For hours, we sat in that kitchen. She told me everything, how she hid her pregnancy from most of her friends, how only her sister, my Aunt Mary, knew the truth and helped her through it. She described the day she gave birth, the sound of her baby's first cry, and the crushing silence when she signed the adoption papers. She told me about the nights she lay awake in college dorms, staring at the ceiling, aching for the baby she would never hold again. And as she spoke, I realized this wasn't just my mother's story. It was my story, too. I had a sister out there in the world, a piece of our family I never knew existed. The sun had shifted high into the sky by the time she finished, the kitchen filled with the bright light of afternoon. My heart was heavy yet strangely hopeful. Mom, I said finally, maybe this doesn't have to be the end of the story. Maybe it can be the beginning of a new one. If you want, I'll help you search for her. You don't have to do it alone. Her eyes widened, filling with tears again, but this time they shone with gratitude. She reached across the table, cupping my face in her hands the way she did when I was a child. You're my miracle, Daniel, she whispered. Whether I find her or not, knowing you love me enough to help me try, that's more than I ever dreamed. That day, my mother finally spoke the words she had buried in her heart for decades. Words of loss, love, regret, and hope. Words that redefined our family and opened a door to a truth we never knew we were missing. I don't know where the journey will take us, or if we'll ever find the sister I never knew I had. But I do know this: my mother's courage to speak changed everything. And sometimes, the most powerful stories aren't the ones we keep locked away, but the ones we finally find the strength to share.